any business can scale up if they find the right way to scale up.
That logic of building a brand around what you're doing in the first place and pushing other people to start using that brand to do it as well at their own level is one way to start. McDonald's is interesting for two reasons. One, they managed to build a system, right? So if they want to open a new McDonald's tomorrow, they have a big book where all the processes and the recipes are. Here is the book, welcome in the company, make money now. Everyone can decide to buy a franchise, but it's also a question of saying, okay, you have a business. If tomorrow you wanted to try and create a franchise out of it, then what steps would you have to go through and how?
Hello everyone, hope you are really great, and today we'll talk with Antoine still about scaling up your company. So Antoine, really good to have you again here.
Hi again.
And yes, today we will talk about many things, but can you tell us what you will talk about today?
So we've had an interesting discussion in the studio, and we were wondering, okay, we talk about scaling up, but is scale up for everyone? The question is a difficult one because yes and no. There is part of a discussion that's about the mindset and what you are willing to do, what you're ready to do. There is part of the discussion that's about the method, how do you do it? And part of the discussion is about how do you make sure that your mindset and the method don't actually conflict and get you stuck in the middle. So that's what we're going to talk about.
Okay, and I will, right before you begin, I will talk about that special thing when you say it's what the people want. Because actually, we could say any business can scale up if they find the right way to scale up. For example, franchise is an easy way to scale up a company when you have an agency, a product that is based somewhere and you want to expand it somewhere else, then you make it a franchise. But the owner of that first company, that first business, want to get to that point. And in the end, the answer, in my opinion, to what we discussed in the studio here is yes, we can, every business can scale up, but not everybody will want to make it for real, and it's not aligned to what they wish to their own business and to their vision. So yeah, that's kind of tricky, but it is, but not really.
Yeah, I think one of the starting points is, again, what do we mean by scale up? There is another video on that, right? So we're not going to do the whole thing again, but in our definition, scaling up means business into an asset, something that's going to work for you without you. And if you extend it, it becomes a question of how do you make sure that your team can grow in a durable way, and how do you scale yourself up by going to your own next level. Okay, that's being said, if you need more, look at the other video. But real life kind of example, there are different use cases, right? We were talking earlier with Will. Say hi, Will.
Hi.
Hi. We were talking about with Will, Apple, right? Apple could be one of the key big examples of a company that sells tech but goes huge because there is a system where other brands can plug in and work on this and that company is going to keep producing more and more models based on the same one, and it's going to escalate progressively, right? So, okay, Apple is scaling up. Does it mean everyone has to be Apple? No. Does it mean you can't scale up without being Apple? No. So, our perspective is to say, you can scale up, you can get to another level, you can get to a next level, provided that you start thinking about it. So I think that's something important to say here. There is a difference, and so is it applicable to everyone? Well, clearly everyone can take some part of that discussion and apply it to themselves.
Exactly.
we agreed on a few examples, right? We're going to talk about that, but there is something about franchising, some discussion about franchising, which is a question of how do I go from what I do myself into something I can push others to do with my brand. There is something that can be done in terms of how do we scale up a company from an organization standpoint. There is something to do in terms of how do I scale up my company by not being in charge anymore. How do I build a board? How do I make sure that the company is set up to be able to work without me again? There are some topics that are relevant in terms of scaling up for funding, legal organization of a company, that especially if you start working across continents, for instance, or in multiple countries. There is a perspective about productizing. Can you build a method? Can you build a product that you can basically sell to other people so that they can start using it, whether that's SaaS or whatever you want to talk about. And then there is also the challenge of accepting to get to a new scale that pushes your business way further than planned. The risk being that people are going to say, hey, but that's not me anymore, right? So that's a few examples that we can talk about.
That's great. So let's begin. Let's begin to the first one. And if I remember well, the first one you told was about, I don't remember, go on.
The first example was about how to turn my business into something others are going to want to use as well in a franchise kind of context.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, there is a book that I recommend every time. It's this one. It's called The E-Myth by Michael Berger. And the subtitles is Why Most Small Business Don't Work and What Can We Do About It. So this concept of how do I turn something that I'm doing me, myself, and I, maybe with a small team, into something that can get bigger, and that's going to build a new business model through franchising, for instance. That's what Gerber is talking about in that book. The interesting thing about this is that it takes an easy example, which is the baker around the street, the corner of the street. And it depends where you are. If you are French like us, typically the baker around the street is an independent company.
Most of it, yeah.
It's the guy with his wife and maybe 2-3 people in the shop, and they're paid to either be at the back and make the bread or be at the front and sell it, right? But you can be sure that one of the guys around is the boss, the owner of the company. And usually in the way we do things, if we see a bakery that's a chain, we're going to be like, this is industrial, this is not good. So typically we would go to the guy who's not a chain, right? But you go anywhere else, that's not how things happen. You go in Asia, they don't make bread typically, but you have lots of chains there because they love it. It's just chains. It means it's been produced in mass and it's been distributed in a few shops and it's been sold because people go in because it's actually a chain. You wouldn't go there if it was not. And that's the case in the UK, that's the case in the US for a variety of topics, right? So that logic of building a brand around what you're doing in the first place and pushing other people to start using that brand to do it as well at their own level is one way to scale up. It's interesting because it means you can start from what you have. And it's interesting because it means you don't need to raise millions for that. You need to get your mindset to the next level. You need to accept that tomorrow your job is different. Yeah. Your job is not to go and make bread yourself and sell it. Your job is to have some money a bit to pay someone who's going to do that, while you can just work on the business, not in the business, on the business, and you can start thinking, okay, what does it take to open another shop? Okay, let's say, what does it take to build 2 shops? 2, because just one is like you can go in the morning and help them, right? 2 you can't. So if I want to build 2 shops tomorrow, what do? I need to have processes in place. I need to make sure they have the same uniform. I need to make sure the bread is going to be the exact same recipe and it's going to be produced the exact same way. The cakes are going to look the exact same way, right? So that if you, as the client, come in either of my 3 shops, it's going to be the same. That's Starbucks.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we can look at it on the other way. So now you are a scaled up already company. You open multiple shops. And what are the common basis we can see on those ones? You said a little, and me, there is one I really like about is when you scale, you do some storytelling. You tell a story and look at, for example, we have a brand that is, I think, a French one that is also in Portugal here. In Lisbon, we have Paul, and Paul is a bakery brand. They have a lot of franchise, I think, all around the world. You see them most are in airport and many things like that. And what they have is a real storytelling about how they get to that little bakery that was open at the beginning and to what it is now. There was one vision, one intention, and because they made up all the processes to get to that point, they succeeded to get to that point. So sometimes it's also good to ask the question on the other way. So I am already in that position. What did I do to get to that position and to be sure it works now? Instead of sometimes the people think in the other way, I want to scale up. What should I do to scale up? You didn't do it. So maybe you won't have the answer. But if you put yourself in a position where you did it already, the answers will come more easily and clearly.
There is a storytelling aspect. That's the brand side. The other aspect that's really essential is the customer journey. And the customer journey is something people don't talk about. Most people never heard of customer journey before. But it's something that, again, if you know, you know. Customer journey means a brand, a company, is looking at what the customer is doing, what they are feeling, what they are going to say, what they are going to like, what they are going to complain about, and they use all these elements, touch points, to build an experience around them, right? So when you have a company that grows and scales, again, we say that scaling means building something durable that can keep working without requiring your attention for everything. Then that customer journey has to be the exact same everywhere. We were talking about McDonald's, the pickle, whatever. They have a machine that you grill the beef, whatever you want, and then it's not like they put the mayo in 3 different points. They have a machine that puts 3 points of mayo on the thing. It's been standardized.
And I can give a feedback also on that, because for people to know, I worked also, it was my first job to work at McDonald's. So when you go through McDonald's as an employee because you begin to work and you need money because you are getting to the real world because you were student, or I was still student at this time and working at McDonald's. Now I look at this situation and I really see all the points that McDonald's succeed to scale and to organize and to processize really with perfectness. So it's really interesting to look at McDonald's in that way,
Yeah, because, and the point with McDonald's is also interesting for 2 reasons. Why? One, they managed to build a system, right? So if they want to open a new McDonald's tomorrow, they have a big book, I guess, where all the processes and the recipes are. Here is the book, welcome in the company, make money now, right? But this is also a business model, because if I'm McDonald's and I'm giving you the book, it's because I know you're paying for that book. And what you are paying for is, obviously, this is McDonald's. So as soon as I put McDonald's on top of my shop, I'm going to get clients, first. But two, it means you are going, well, I am going as the McDonald's, I'm going to give you the potatoes. I'm going to sell you everything you need to make that shop run. So when you start thinking about this, it means me as a company, I can build the processes and I can sell you those processes, but I can also sell you everything you need to make that work.
So every margin on the way. Each part of that process is a margin for the main McDonald's. And in addition of that, we know the film about McDonald's, Ray Rock, and we saw that it's definitely a real estate based company. So actually, those persons that are franchised about McDonald's, they open a shop, but they pay for the real estate that is growing there, and that will be free for McDonald's in the end. So that's also part of the business model.
Yeah. So that's one of the points with is it applicable to everyone? Well, if we talk about a franchise kind of system, everyone can decide to open a franchise, well, buy a franchise, that's for sure. But it's also a question of saying, okay, you have a business. If tomorrow you wanted to try and create a franchise out of it, then what steps would you have to go through, and how can you use those steps to try and structure the thing? So think about, okay, production. What do I need? Today it's me, but tomorrow it's someone else. How do I make a list of everything that has to be done, and how can I give them that list? Selling. Okay, what's the pitch? What is the value proposition? How do we sell it? What do we talk about? Do we talk about the fact that our burger has 3 pickles and 1 slice of cheese and 1 slice of lettuce? Basically, we list the features. Or do we pitch the fact that this is the best burger ever? Because it's vegan, because it's not vegan, absolutely not, just pure beef, right? Whatever. But do we list the features or the benefits? If you want to scale your shop into a few shops, you have to make sure that that pitch is actually clear and that every single shop in your network is going to have the same. So you need to build the storytelling at that stage to make sure that everyone talks not about the features, but about the benefits, to make sure the clients are coming for the same reason.
And they recognize the brand and the awareness around that. Yeah.
And the brand and the awareness, and they're willing to pay the price before they actually got there. They're not going to look. And they are going to brag about it. We are at whatever brand. So this is something that can be done. Again, that book here, if you're interested in that logic, it's really interesting.
I should really read it.
Yeah, it's honestly a good Bible. So the first point was, okay, can we try and use the franchising system? Another one, I listed it at a later stage when we talked about earlier, but I'm going to talk about it now. It's productization. And productization is another way to do things. It means, okay, we have a service. We do this. For instance, we do accounting. Or
community management.
We do community management. Okay.
It's more trendy.
Community management. We know how to do it. We do it well. And you can give us an example next, because you've been doing it.
Yeah.
We're good at doing that. We're good at managing networks and social media and all that. Okay. This is a skill. This is what we do. Okay? But maybe there is a way that we could do a software out of that. So we're going to automate everything online. The software is going to give us the boxes where we need to type this and that, and then it's going to push, we as the users push the button and the software is publishing it. So the software is doing the work, not necessarily people. It means that the service is becoming a product, right? And the people are not needed to actually push the button. They are needed to manage the infrastructure at the back. You don't need someone to push the button to publish an article. You need someone who's a developer, who is going to build the next stages of the app, right? So you still need people, but for different reasons. That's kind of the idea behind productization. That's another way to start thinking about how you can scale, how you can get to another level, how you can serve more clients, right? And in your case, you have an example of that, right? Because you've been working as the owner of a social media and digital marketing company.
Agency, yeah, exactly. And actually, when we look at it and when I look at it now, so I stepped back a little from the company. So I will give you insight from when it was for me time to get involved in it, and now how I see it in the other companies also. So before we were doing it, most of it manually. So we were creating the visuals, we were creating the video, we were creating whatever kind of content was needed for the social networks of the persons. And then we were going to publish it at the right time. We could program it still, but we were doing it ourselves. Then we tried, when I was still involved in the agency, to automatize it with kind of SaaS. Back in the days, it was not fully automatized and it was not optimum, because Instagram was against it, Facebook was against it, it's still the same company, and the other ones also. So it was really complicated to find a real SaaS that could help you to create this kind of content. But still, we were trying to optimize it and to make it more faster. So we could succeed to make it a little more effective, but it was not there yet. So on this side, then I let my associate handle the development of that community management side, and we began with the employees to try to automatize all the process and to make it a real process, so that, because we were an agency, each customer we will bring into the agency, we just had to make the exact same process, just make it fully different on the concern of the company, the real subject of the company, the niche, the sector, whatever. But then it was the same process. So it was kind of easy to duplicate and to make it work for any kind of businesses and customers. But now when I look at how I do it with my own businesses, I found a way to automatize the content process creation, so that this content process creation is fully made with less time as possible. So with the agency, we still work in the same way as before, because for customers, you still need to be near them, close to them, be asking them questions and keep the discussion with them, because otherwise they will think you do nothing and they have the job done, but you're not worth paying. But for me, the goal on my own other companies, so this one is with my associate, but now on the other companies I have, when I do it for my own, not for customers, my goal is to pay someone that will do the job, but spend the less time on it, and me make the best margin on it. So because of that, then my way of creating content in terms of community management and posting social media strategy, whatever the name we call it, was and is actually totally different. Because now, for us, we fully use AI, we fully use everything that allows us to create that content really fast. And for example, I would give this example. Today, we are recording a podcast. This podcast, we won't ask for someone to look at the entire video and to cut, okay, this part, and then make the video and allow us to make it published. We will use an app that is a SaaS that will allow us to, with AI, create in one time this video, and because it's made in one time, it's ready to publish already. So then we'll want time. We paid someone to do that, few clicks, but it cost him a few minutes, and then he's ready to do the other important tasks.
So when we were talking about the difference between service and productization, that's what we're talking about. Because at some point, it was a question of recording. Do it again.
Yeah.
Doing it again. Recording again. And then checking. And then doing it again. and then sending it to someone who was selling the service of doing the editing, and then sending it back to us, and then we look at it and we publish. Whereas now, it's, what's the product? Podcast, video, content, right? So it means there is a shift from, we need to go through a process and hire someone who can do video editing as a service, to just the output of it, the final deliverable, which is we have a podcast.
And you can say it's a pain process we went from to what we are now. So before it was really a pain to record a content, record a podcast, record whatever interview you have, because you should check at the camera if it works. Sometimes you have no battery. Sometimes it's SD cards that have no space, no memory. And then you see, okay, it's not lighty enough. So you need a different light. You need some colors. You need some this and that. And you have always a trouble on the process. And because you have always a problem on the process, you have also a solution, and that solution we productize it into a podcast studio. So yeah, it was really a need that we create a podcast and a product in front of that.
And which is getting back to the point I was using earlier about the bakery. When you say, okay, in that bakery they're going to talk about the features. Oh, we have this bread and that bread and blah blah blah. Whereas in the other one, they're going to talk about the benefits. We have just the best bread coming. In the end, one is just about selling what people want to hear, which is, I'm going to give you the bread you want. Just get in. That's the point. All right, so that's another way to scale the business organization. That's another way to scale the business activity. Another one would be to think in terms of, again, I didn't use the right word actually, but would be to focus on how you can organize your organization, right? Let's take an example. Things are global these days, right? So today we're in Lisbon and we work from Lisbon. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But some of the people in the team are in Dubai, in Hong Kong. So when you get to a system like that where the company is working globally, how do you manage to think in terms of, okay, my operations have to be detailed. They have to be turned into a process so that we know that this guy is in charge of this guy is in charge of that. Let me give you an example. A client of mine, a former client of mine, in Asia, right, joined a company in the US. We'll do a podcast with him at some point. He joined a company in the US that's making tables. Very nicely designed tables and all that. That company in the US was producing everything in the US. So they had a very cool Brooklyn kind of mindset and brand, right? So the image was very Brooklyn-like and all that. The problem was that they were also Brooklyn kind of cost in terms of production. Mm-hmm. So the scalability of the model was difficult because the people who would buy that table would have to be willing to pay a certain price for it. And so that would put them directly in competition with IKEA or whatever brand that's already scaled and can produce for a less cheaper price in quantity. So what they did was, when they started thinking in terms of how can we scale the operations to be more, again, profitable and organized, they started working with the guy I was working with, who was based in China. Why? Because the guy was Western, so he had the Western mindset, but he was living in China, Hong Kong. And that meant he could understand the people locally. He could get there in 2 hours. He could talk to them. He could do business with them. And he could be the touch point for the Brooklyn brand in Asia. He also had the network. So he was basically capable of finding a few suppliers and get the best prices because he knew them. So it's not like you're going to send an email and see whether you get screwed or not. So in that case, the point was really to organize the company. That's another way to see it. Have you seen that in?
Actually, one of my business is also sourcing product in Asia, e-commerce store. So we got the same concern, but it was on the other way. So we were sourcing our product in Asia, but we wanted also to source product in France because we were selling in France also and in Europe. So the question was more in a different way. It was more a case of yes, sourcing, but also having the product already in place in the country we're selling, to win time, to optimize the whole process, and to be sure that for the customers the experience is way more well handled. So it was the opposite. But in a way, when you are global, you definitely need to spend time on being sure that your process, because it is global, is way more handled than only national one. Because on the global system, you have a lot of elements that could go wrong. Even when you do importation, exportation, in a way or the other, in shipment, in law, in legal taxes. So there is a lot of things that could put yourself in a no margin situation. And I got the situation on my own, where on a business that is closed now, I had to close because with the VAT on Europe, I was not profitable. While out of Europe, I was. But it was too late for me to switch back and go back into the international way out of Europe. But yeah.
Actually, the point you're making is that the logic that I was using in terms of saying, okay, we're going to talk about scaling up as an organization across continent is the same one as the logic you would use to scale a business using drop shipping. But doesn't have to be between Europe or the US and China.
Exactly, it can be anywhere else. I have actually a good example. I have a company I was working with the agency for the communication that was selling, how do we say that, to get into your garden. You have not a portal, but that opens electrically or not. How do we call that in English?
A gate.
A gate, yeah.
The electric gate.
Electric gate. It's only gate? Okay, gate. Let's use that word, it's good. So, yeah, that was selling gates. Fully personalized. You could choose whatever you want on it. They were selling back in France, but they were creating it in Poland, I think, if I'm not wrong. And so for them, they were in a situation where the shipment was really fast, even if it was in Poland. And because their factory was processed fully, they could handle that shipment to France, and their market was in France. So they didn't sold anywhere else, only France, but they had their factory back in Poland. So for them it was easy to optimize there because of the costs, and then to sell in France because it was their market and where they were based. So that was really interesting to see, because on something fully personalized, where you make an order that is actually kind of drop shipping, you sell gates, that is a big product and a high value, high ticket product, because it's 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, depends. And still you can make it come on a short time, and you will allow the people to connect with someone that will make the installation. So it was a really good way to develop, and actually they were doing crazy numbers in terms of ads also. On Google Ads they were making, I don't know, multiplicator of 42. So you put €1, you get $42. €1, 42 euros. So mind-blowing results. And they did that for many months. So yeah.
The same probably applies for let's say you're solo, right? You work from your couch, you just need a computer, you're a designer. Actually, that's a good example. You're a designer, right? And today your job is to design whatever graphics for whatever company. They need something, they call you, you design it, you sell your time. Tomorrow, you design whatever you want, and you find a company, Printify, whatever, and you're going to put your designs on their website, and they're going to print your t-shirts with that design. But they can also put it on pillows, hats, caps, sweaters, whatever you want. You just have to put your design on there, and they are going to sell it, ship it, do the heavy lifting, and get you paid. You can still have your own website. You can still sell your own stuff, right? But they are doing that. That's a form of scaling.
Yeah, and that way of print on demand, we call that way in e-commerce, that way of print on demand, putting your visual, whatever graphics, whatever content you have created, put it on whatever you want, and sell it widely and globally, is just an amazing scaling. Just you need to have a strong belief, a strong awareness, a strong brand to allow people to come and then to sell globally. So, yeah.
Another way to scale and talk about scaling and push scaling dynamic in a company is to make yourself redundant, right? That's the end game. But to get yourself redundant in a company where, okay, you have a team, a small team, a big team, is to make sure that there is an organization that allows some kind of a board, somehow, to make decisions when you're not here, right? Have you seen that before in one of the companies you've been working? Have you delegated?
Yeah, I delegate a lot, but I've never placed yet a player like a director or someone that could do and take the decision for me. Not that on the companies that I'm not really involved and I have only few shares, it's okay, they handle everything and I don't have to. But on the other ones, I am always there for the decisions, and I better be sometimes, because otherwise we lose a good direction. But it's something I really want to go. It's just a matter of how big was the company. I never went to a subject where the company was so big and making thousands of millions to be able to put a director and to make it run with a director. But with the podcast studio, I think it will be something we will be trying to, because we are multiple associates. And I will wish to Will, for example, that is there with us, to be the kind of person that will be able to be on that board and be like a director for the whole company, to take those decisions to be sure it goes on the right way. And we'll see on the development how fast we'll go, when it will come to that point, when we will open some more podcast studio, because this one is still the first one, and then we will adapt accordingly. But yeah, it's mainly a matter of when we get to that point, we can definitely put a board and put people to take decision. But you need to be sure, and that was a concern also on my own, to be sure that the person you give power to take decision are a good person with good intention and goes on the right way also for the company, as you would expect to do yourself.
There is also the point of not putting a director in place. That's part of it. Like, you get replaced by a professional CEO, right? Mm-hmm. But there is also the point of putting a board into place. The difference is, okay, I worked with a company back in Asia, and it got complicated because it was a group. Not allowed to give too much details on what they were doing, but let's say they were a group. The founders left, and they gave the key to a new CEO who was a professional CEO, right? Not an entrepreneur, a professional CEO. And that CEO said, in his words, what happened was the founders left because they were tired and they wanted to, move on. Mm-hmm. And they said, there is one key, don't lose it. And the responsibility was on him, one person, to drive the machine. Big pressure, right? The issue with that is because everything is on one person, if that one person doesn't do the things right, then the whole company is doomed. The alternative is to have a board. The board means you have a team inside the company, and that team is supposed to meet regularly and to decide together. And when you start thinking like that, it means, okay, so far I'm the owner, I'm the CEO, but there is a chief financial officer, there is a chief operations officer, for instance, and there is HR, someone in charge of the team. So maybe these three people can decide without me. It's just about organizing my company so that these three have to meet every Monday, talk about whatever is going on. The three of them know. And when there is a decision to make, they have to make the decision together. So they have to meet every Monday, right? And when there is a decision to make, they have to make it together. If they are not happy with the same decision, either they don't make a decision and they have to decide next week, or one of them has two voices instead of just one and can push the decision one way or another, and a decision has to be made. It's just internal governance, and that depends on you to set it up the way you want. Regardless, it means as soon as you have a company that has 10, 15 people, you can start putting that into place. And the reality is a lot of companies are actually small companies are actually a lot bigger than just 10, 15 people. It doesn't mean their CEO is actually thinking like that. So it's definitely something that can be done.
Okay, so in the end, it means using the power and the responsibility of your employees to be owners themselves on the decision of the company itself.
Yes.
So that's a board.
Yes, and it can even be something where you give them shares.
Yeah, exactly. And actually that's something I really like, because the more you incentivize your teams, your people that take the decisions with the profit of the company, the more eager they will be to make the right decision and be sure it will work great for your company. So some people are, I don't know how to say it in English, but they want to keep it all for themselves. And if you have this mindset, I think it's not going to be well for the scaling company. So, yeah.
Actually, it's a good point, because when you talk to especially the people who start, something they say a lot is, so they say two things. They say, I have an idea, but I don't want to talk about it because people could steal it. Which is the most stupid thing to do, right? Because an idea is just an idea, and execution is the execution of the idea is what really makes the difference. The other point is that when people start, they want to have most of the equity themselves. And it sounds like in their head, having the equity is the success. I own my company. I built my own company, right?
Ego.
Wow. Ego. And it's always very difficult to explain to a new entrepreneur. Not to explain. It's not the explanation part that's difficult. It's making them understand.
And accept.
And accept that there is value in giving a slice of your cake if it makes the cake bigger. And that's the beginning of the scaling mindset. So when you're building a company and you have someone who says, this is my cake, that means the cake is not going to change size. If that guy says, I'm happy to give half of my cake to someone else, but the cake becomes 3 times the size, then that's the beginning of the scaling. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's something that's pretty typical. So in the end, to come back to what we were saying, when you have a company that's already there, you already have a team, you're in charge, you make the decisions, blah, blah, blah. It makes sense to say, okay, I have these 3 people. 2 is not a good number, because 2 is yes or no. 3 people is going to be either 3 of them agreeing or not agreeing. I mean, yes or no. But if they don't agree, it's going 2-1. So you can always have a decision with a majority anyway. So as long as you have 3 people that you can put in one room and say, you guys have to decide on whatever comes next, and you can agree that they are in charge and they can get a share of what you own, because that's not going to cost you anything. That's just going to make your cake bigger. Then that gives you a way to keep moving. But first, you have to accept it there.
Yeah, and I think that's a right vision for the scaling of a company. And yeah, I think it will close our exchange for that video for the people. And would you like to add a little something to that video today?
No, I think it's just something you have to put in your head.
Thank you guys for being there. We hope you had a great moment with us, and we stay updated for what's next. See you.